Hi, everyone. So I really wanted to do the book club on the Zoom app, which is like a conference, and it felt really cool and millennial. And I'm clearly not of that caliber because I couldn't figure out how to record it. So nothing was recorded. Now I'm trying to share it with a few friends, and I can't. So let's do a live because this is my favorite forum where all my friends are at. Let's talk about the book. This is the book. It's called Real Power. I don't know if you see the normal version or the reverse, but it says Real Power. Rise above your nature and stop feeling angry, anxious, or insecure. That sounds like a really good deal. I do not want any of those feelings, angry, anxious, or insecure. And I want to rise above my nature. Why not? Anyway, so the author is Dovid Lieberman. He has a PhD. He's a New York Times best-selling author. His book was translated in many different languages, and he sold millions of copies. So I thought, I really like the title, and I judge a book by its cover, and it has the word power, which is my favorite word in the world, because I'm all about knowing your power. Can you just say yes if you hear my voice? Because this is the first time I'm using my desktop, and I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Anyone? Perhaps no one hears me? I don't know. Okay. So let's start with the book. The book's introduction is pretty interesting. It says here, real power offers neither, thank you, Shira. Real power offers neither exercises or affirmations, nor meditations or motivating mantras, which I have done all of those things. Exercises, affirmations. You guys know I love to talk about those things, meditations, motivating mantras. That's like right up my alley. There's no homework to do or journals to fill out. And so I know a lot of you are going to like that because a lot of you don't like my recommendations to do a journal. So if you don't like homework, I got you the book you want. No homework. It says here, rather, readers learn how to regain self-control with bold letters and move their thoughts, choices, and lives in a purposeful, powerful direction, free from the shackles of anxiety and stress. That's a pretty good deal. So when I read that, I was like, okay, let's get into it. So I went to chapter 1. Chapter 1, A Glimpse of Reality. That's what he titles the chapter. So in this chapter, I'm going to paraphrase a lot of what he says in this chapter, because I just said the whole thing on Zoom, so it's really clear in my mind, but I couldn't figure out how to save it. So here I am. Anyway, so the first chapter talks about why do some people deal with challenges really well? Optimistic, calm. You know those people. Think about them. Maybe they're your mom, maybe they're your coworker. Now think of the other person. When he gets stressed, what does he think? Oh no, this is stressful, very frustrated, complaining, a lot of anxiety. They each have a similar challenge. Let's say they're both coworkers. They're both dealing with a similar challenge. But what happens? One is handling it really well and the other is handling it very bad. Why? Why do you think? And this is really the basis of his book, Perspective. It's all about perspective. One person, the optimistic person, has a very different perspective of the whole situation, while the anxious, person has, unfortunately, a really bad perspective and a very narrow perspective. And he goes on to talk about a child with a toy that gets broken. And what does the child do? He cries, right? Gets a lot of anxiety and gets really frustrated that his toy is all broken. So as adults, we also face similar challenges. We just have bigger toys. We just have fancier toys. Maybe our toy is our marriage. Maybe it's a relationship outside of the marriage. Who knows? Maybe a friendship or children. So all of those situations, when we have a narrow perspective, our toy is broken in our mind. That's the most important thing. And what's one way to see this situation like in a practical way? Have you ever met a bridezilla or watched the episode? I used to watch it a lot. I used to be like a really big TV junkie. So, in the show Bridezilla, they show a lot of these women who have what we would call a very narrow perspective, right? They only see that the DJ is messed up and the dress isn't perfect, and they're complaining about the food is not really the way they wanted it. So what happens over that event? They're not enjoying it. They have a very narrow perspective on what's happening to them. And after the event, over like a few months later, they start to realize they wasted a lot of good moments being upset and angry. And they should have just enjoyed the time with their Prince Charming in their beautiful dress with their delicious meals or whatever. But it took them a few months to get to that mental point, to get to that wider perspective of like, what's really important? Is that really important? So what he wants to do is accelerate that time distance and just basically not wait a few months to get to that point where you realize that didn't even matter. Just like the coworker who's really handling it well, it's because she realizes the things that are stressing the other person out doesn't really matter. Another example, there are two people, both get into a car crash. One of them sustains severe injuries, ends up in the hospital, in rehab, just overwhelming amount of rehab. After a whole year of therapy, finally gets out of the hospital, walking with a cane. Now, the other person got into a car crash, came out with a scratch. Which of these two people is more appreciative of the fact that they can walk? The guy who just came out of it without a scratch, or the guy who struggled for a whole year to figure out how to walk again? And the answer is obvious, right? The guy who struggled. He realizes the value of those steps, and he recognizes he has so much appreciation that he's able to walk. But shouldn't the guy who never got hurt, shouldn't he feel more appreciative because what he got was a real gift? He didn't have to go through the struggles. He had a whole extra year of just walking without struggles. Why is that? Why is it that when a husband and wife bicker about stupid things, because, they're both healthy, let's say, and they bicker about the things that don't matter, he didn't get her flowers, or she didn't prepare dinner on time. These are real practical things that actually happen, right? And now compared to another relationship where the husband or the wife is diagnosed with something serious. Are they arguing about things like dinner's not ready again? Or is she upset with him when, he didn't get her that gift, he wasn't thoughtful? Are they upset about those things? Why? Because even though they have the same 24 hours in the day, they both have a spouse. One of them is seriously aggravated with simple things, and the other one recognizes, even though they have the same 24 hours, the other one recognizes the value of those 24 hours. They recognize that we don't have time for arguing. They see a wider perspective on the situation. They're not so focused on the broken toy that the person who they're married to is not quite the way they imagined him to be, and that toy is broken. They see the bigger picture. Yes, it's not quite what I wanted, but at least I understand that the person I'm with, I value that person, and I want to make that time valuable with him by not wasting it on wasted energy, right? Does that make sense? Guys, anyone? Give me a like if you get it. Okay, so quiet, silence. If you're watching this on play, I thank you for your likes because I'm sure they will eventually come. Okay, so should we talk about chapter 2? Yeah, let's talk about chapter 2 a little bit, and then we'll end it. We'll call it a night. So chapter 2 talks about shifting perspectives. Now, a person, in this book it says, and I've heard this before, some of you may have heard this too, a person has 3 parts inside of him that are always struggling to come out on top. There is the part that does what feels good, the part that does what looks good, and then finally the part that does what is good. So what feels good? What part is that? That's the body, right? It feels good to indulge in ice cream. It feels good to sleep late. It feels good to just give in to that urge, whatever the urge is. You could fill in the blank. Now, what does the ego do? The ego does what looks good. And we know people with a lot of ego, they tend to walk around a certain way. They want a certain kind of attention. They want to look good. They want people to notice they look good. That's the ego doing what looks good. And then the spirit, the soul, does what is good. And that is the highest form of your image. So you have this inherent self-worth and value. That value comes from being created in God's image. When you do what is good, even though it's not easy, right? When you do what is good as opposed to what feels good, or one second, something's happening to my screen. I think my computer doesn't like Facebook Live. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so sorry. Oh gosh, somebody's okay. So I apologize. So when you do what inherently is, when you realize your inherent value, he says, that means you are feeding your self-esteem. You're building your self-esteem. When a person is feeding what they're doing, when the person is feeding their soul, they're doing what is good, and eventually they build their self-image and their self-esteem because they're working on their true self-image of who they're supposed to be. When they're not, they feel guilty, they feel bad, and then the ego tries to distort reality to accommodate that feeling, to protect itself. You know, it's like a false image. It's like a false reality, a false self. The ego is like a false self, and it wants to protect itself from all the mistakes that we make when we do it. Like, let's say we had a fight with our husband, right? We were wrong. Let's say we were wrong, but we kind of don't want to admit it. So we justify our actions, and we say, you know what, well, you did this, so you deserve this, and that's why I did that. Even though what you did was inherently incorrect, we try to justify it because our ego wants to protect us. That's not good. We need to try to stay away from that, right? Because that's not building our self-esteem. That's not building our soul state. And so that's really the basis of chapter 1 and 2. There's a lot in this book. I'm just going to be reading it along with you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe next time I'll be more successful on the Zoom app, chat, whatever. Have a wonderful night, and I hope you guys are all doing well. Bye. Love you. See how to end this.